Hello, everybody. I am going to start today like I do every week. And I just want to say welcome to our campuses. So to those of you at our Kenosha campus, want to say hello to you, our Racine campus. Those of you who faithfully watch online every single week and you genuinely feel like you're a part of this community, it is great to have you. And of course, our Weekends on Wednesday service, which we have. Yes, the energy is endless around here. And everybody, for some reason, is wearing cowboy hats today, so I can't figure that out. So here's the deal, guys. We are in a series that we started at the start of the summer called Old School. And each week of this series, what we're doing is we're looking at the lives of individuals, we're looking at stories, we're looking at key verses, we're looking at life lessons that are found in the first part of our Bible that we call the Old Testament. Yeah. This was really the Bible used by the Jewish people and used by the early church leaders. They would look at these manuscripts that make up our Old Testament, and for them, it was their Bible. Now, we have the New Testament, and so we've got some things that happened after Jesus that we look at, but it's really fascinating. The Old Testament, many of the writings were written 3,000, even 4,000 years ago, which raises the question, why would we look at something that old? Well, it comes down to our big idea that's simply this. The more you know about the past, the better prepared you are for the future. The more lessons we carry with us from the past, the better prepared we are for the future. Now, earlier this month, our entire planet was fixated on a drama that was unfolding in Thailand with a soccer team and a cave. Right? You'll remember this. It was not too far, just literally days ago. And so what happened was this team was trapped, and everybody was trying to figure out how to get them out. And so some of the brightest minds in our world put their minds together, and some of the hardest workers in our world got together. Some of the most creative people, they got together, and they worked 24 hours around the clock trying to figure out a way to help this team escape. And sure enough, the day came where the 12 boys and their coach got out of the cave, and everybody celebrated, and it made people around the world feel amazing. Everybody loves when a story ends well. We love it, right? We love it when after a long embrace with Elliot, E.T. gets back on the spaceship and heads back with his friends, right? We love that. We love it when Dorothy wakes up and she's no longer in Oz, but she's surrounded by her friends and her family. And she realizes, man, this is going to be a good day. We love it when Nemo heads back with his dad and the clownfish are next to each other and they're on this journey and it's going to turn out all right. We love it when after 3 hours of atrocious acting and forced dialogue, the ship finally goes down and Leonardo freezes to death and dies, all right? One of the greatest phrases in the English language is they all lived happily ever after. Yeah. We love it when fairy tales end that way. We love it when movies end that way, when stories end that way. And of course, that's the way all of us not just want our life to end, that's the way we want our life to unfold. Which is why from very early on, we have big dreams of what we want our life to look like. We want to be a doctor. We want to be a nurse. We want to be a politician in some case, right? We want to be a firefighter, a police officer. That's what we want to do with our life. We want to be a singer, an actor, an actress. And we get all worked up, and then we start thinking about the person that we are most attracted to, and so we have these dreams of the person we're going to spend the rest of our life with, and we want to have 2.5 kids with. And then depending on your personality, you start to dream of where you want to live. Some want to live out in the country. Others want to live in a home in the suburbs. Some, their ideal place is in a condo in some downtown of a big city. Others picture a shed in the mountains of Montana with no water, right, and no electricity, and they just kind of are living on the grid. I mean, every one of us are built differently, but the one thing we have in common is we all have a picture of how we want our lives to unfold. Most of us wish that at some point in our life we would make more money or win more money than we knew what to do with. As humans, none of us are short on dreams or resolutions or good intentions. But if life has taught us anything, it ought to be that our dreams and that our wishes and that our hopes and our good intentions never lead us to where we want to go. If you don't hear anything else I say today, I want you to hear this. It is the path we take in life that determines where we end up. Direction determines destination. It is the path we take in life that determines where we end up. Not our prayers, not our religious background, not our education, not our salary, not our hopes, not our wishes, not our intentions, not our goals, not our resolutions. It is the path we take in life that determines where we end up. So if after our gathering today, I wanted to surprise my family and I packed everyone into the vehicle and I put a bunch of swimsuits in there and I put some sunscreen in there and I put some towels in there and I announced to the family, we are going to Florida, and then I get on 94 and I start heading north, it doesn't matter how fast I drive. It doesn't matter how intentional I am about getting to Florida. It doesn't matter how many friends I told. It doesn't matter if I prayed for traveling mercies. I get on 94 and I start heading north and then I veer a little bit west, I'm going to end up in the godforsaken state of Minnesota. I will not end up in Florida. That is the way life works. Now, we know that in the area of driving, and we know that in the area of hiking. We understand direction determines destination. But for some reason, when it comes to our finances, when it comes to our parenting, when it comes to our relationships, when it comes to our business, when it comes to our lifestyle pursuits, we're really not all that good at connecting the dots. Somehow, we convince ourselves that our hopes and dreams are going to lead us to where we want to go. But they never do. It is the path we take that determines where we end up. Direction determines destination. Not our motives, not our prayers, and not our education. Now, last week, I did go on vacation with the family. Went to Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. And on the day before we left, I decided to do an adventure. Okay, so I got in my kayak. I have a couple kayaks, and I brought them with me. I got in my kayak at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I decided to go on this 9-mile kayak trip. So I'd mapped this out, and according to the maps there in the Lake of the Ozarks, this was 9 miles. Well, about halfway through my kayaking journey, I did not read the map correctly, so I ended up on a wrong turn. And I did not realize I had taken a wrong turn until I had already gone in the wrong direction for 1 mile. Now listen, when you're in a vehicle and you get lost for a mile, no big deal. A kayak, that's about 30 minutes. And so I had to take another 30 minutes to get back to where I was supposed to be. So a total hour detour. And the reason what we're talking about today is so important is because if you get lost on a kayak, you're going to lose an hour of time. If you get lost driving, you're going to lose 15 minutes. You're going to lose 30 minutes. If you get lost in life, you can lose years of your life. Now, we don't think about this much, but every decision in our life and in every arena of our life, it is a path. So when I go hang out with some people on Friday night, I'm thinking, well, this is just a hangout. This is just a date. This is just good times, but it's more than that. It's a path. Right? When I speak words to someone, I think, well, I'm just having a conversation. These are just words coming out of my mouth, which they are, but they're more than that. They are a path. When I have something to eat, I think, this is just a meal, it's just a snack. It's more than that. It's a path. Right? When I spend money on something, I think, I'm just spending a few bucks, no big deal. It's just another purchase. It's more than that. It's a path. When I read something, when I watch TV, when I watch a movie, I'm thinking this is just entertainment. And of course it is entertainment, but it's more than that. It is a path. It eventually, over time, leads somewhere. And at the end of the day, the path we are on determines where we end up. Now, this is a principle that can work for us or against us. And what I want to do today is I want to spend the rest of the time we have together looking at an interesting set of verses in the book of Proverbs. Okay, Proverbs is in the Old Testament. It was written by a guy named Solomon. If you've never heard of Solomon, he is a guy who had more wealth, more power, and more fame than we could even imagine. Highly, highly intelligent, highly, highly educated. He was the master of many different subjects. He wrote more than 3,000 different proverbs. So these short sayings that teach us about life. He wrote more than 1,000 songs. So pick your favorite artist. I mean, he just trumped them all day long. Solomon wrote several books. 3 of them ended up in our Bible, in our Old Testament. On top of that, he was a mastermind in construction. And so Solomon actually oversaw the construction of the first Jewish temple. It's known as Solomon's Temple. Solomon oversaw that. And then he had many other building projects that he oversaw. To add to his resume, he was the 3rd king of Israel. And during his reign, leaders from all over the known world traveled to Jerusalem to spend time with Solomon, to just learn from him and to seek wisdom from him. And so the author of the book of Proverbs is Solomon. That's what we're looking at today. And more specifically, we're looking at a very specific story in the book of Proverbs. Now, we don't know if this is a true story. And that's really irrelevant because what we do know about the story is that Solomon writes it, and he writes it in the first person. He writes it from his own perspective, and he writes it in order to teach his readers a very important lesson. Okay, so the story starts out, Solomon is standing at a window, and he's looking out, and he sees this young man on a walk. And he sees the direction this young man is headed. And based on the direction he's headed, Solomon quickly comes to the conclusion of what's going to happen at the end of this story. He knows, based on where this young man is headed, it's not going to end well for this kid. Now, all of us have stories like this, right? Where we can sit back and say, hey, I know how this story is going to end before it ends. I know how the movie's going to end. I know how this guy's life is going to unfold. And it's not because I'm really smart, and it's not because I have a degree in it, and it's not because I have some sort of weird sixth sense. It's because I just have an idea of how life works. Right? So years ago, I watched a documentary, one of the most fascinating documentaries I've ever watched, called Grizzly Man. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's about a guy named Timothy Treadwell. He goes off the grid. He pretty much drops out of society, moves to the Alaskan wilderness, lives there for a long time, and spends his days interacting with grizzly bears, okay? So this is his deal. Like, he wants to commune with these animals. And so he set up a video that would film him interacting with these wild animals. How many of you, in all of our different locations, how many of you have never seen the documentary Grizzly Man? All right, so I'm gonna ask only those of you who've never seen the documentary to answer a question for me. This is like a pop quiz, only if you've never seen it. Here's a guy interacting with wild grizzly bears day after day. How many of you would guess this does not end well for Timothy Treadwell? You are correct. It does not unfold happily ever after. Now, sometimes when we see a person headed in a certain direction, we're able to determine the ending of the story. Again, it's not because we're so smart, but we have this inkling, we have this hunch what's going to happen before they do, just because we have an understanding of how life works. And that's what happens in this story that Solomon writes. He's looking out his window, and he sees what's going to happen before the kid sees it. All right? Here's what he writes. He says, "While I was at the window of my house, looking through the curtain, I saw some naive young men, and one in particular who lacked common sense." What an abrupt way to start a story. Right? This isn't once upon a time. Right? This isn't a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. No, Solomon says, I looked out my window, and there were some young men taking a walk. They were really naive, and one in particular lacked common sense. I mean, it seems like he's really being mean in talking about these individuals he sees, but he's not trying to be mean. He's actually just stating a fact. He said, these are guys who don't have a whole lot of life experience. These are guys without a lot of wisdom. Because in order to have wisdom, you have to have life experience. Wisdom takes time. Wisdom requires lessons that are learned over the years. Every single one of us, when we look back at our middle school years or our high school years or our college years, I'm confident that every single one of us have stories that we could tell of times that we were just stupid, right? We were naive. We did things, we said things that we wish we could go back and undo. And here's the deal. At the time, we thought it was okay. It was no big deal. We weren't trying to shipwreck our lives. We weren't trying to do anything stupid. It was just we were naive. We didn't have enough life experience to know that is not what I should be doing. That is not what I should be saying. 1997, I decided I was going to drop out of college. I'd gone for 3.5 years. I literally had 1 semester left. So I called my parents and said, hey, I'm going to drop out because I have an opportunity to go work with students full time, and it's what I'm going to college for anyway, so why finish, right? I'll do it correspondence or something. And they said, Dave, that's not a good idea. Mama said, don't do it. Daddy said, don't do it. Right? Then I started calling people that I admire, adults in my life, Dave, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. So I did it. And I said, but that's fine because I'm going to finish correspondence. It took me 10 years to finish correspondence. Finally, in 2008, I got my degree. In 2003, I sold a house, and for the first time in my life, I had a chunk of money. Ooh, it felt so good. Made some money on the house, and it was like, what am I going to do with this? And I had a buddy who said, Dave, I can give you 15% guaranteed return on your investment if you invest it with me in my company. So I called my parents, and I said, I have this opportunity, and Mama said, don't do it. And Dad said, don't do it. You've got other things. And then I started calling my friends who are in the money industry, and they said, Dave, we're sure your friend has good motives, and I'm sure that they're sincere. Don't do it. So I did it. And of course, 4 years later, it was gone. And I didn't do it because I wanted to shipwreck my life. I didn't do it because I wanted to lose out on the money I had made. I did it because I was just naive. I didn't fully understand at that time how life worked. And you did the same thing, right? Because you looked at your parents, or you looked at your parents' friends, or you looked at your teachers, and you're like, yeah, you're a lot older than me. You're part of a different generation. You dress kind of funky. You don't do your hair cool. So, yeah, I'm sure you mean well, but I'm going to do what I want to do. You're naive. You lack common sense. That's the guy Solomon is writing about in this story. Here's what he writes next. He was crossing the street near the house of an immoral woman, strolling down the path by her house. It was at twilight in the evening as deep darkness fell. Now, you don't have to be a Bible scholar to know where this story's headed. Right? If you've never heard the story before, you kind of get this picture of what's happening. The sun is going down, and this young man is taking a walk, and he's walking toward the house of an immoral woman, which was the house of a prostitute. And Solomon is saying, man, I see where this is headed. Now, in the back of this kid's mind, there's a soundtrack playing as he's walking down the street. And it's not do-a-diddy, diddy-dum, diddy-do. No, he's got a soundtrack playing in the back of his mind, and it's from old school songs, man. It is Kool and the Gang. He is singing, celebrate good times, come on. This is going to be a party tonight. This is going to be a fun time. Meanwhile, up at the window, Solomon's checking this whole thing out, and he's watching it unfold. He sees this young man walking, and there's a soundtrack playing in his mind. But it's a different soundtrack. This is the theme from Jaws. He's saying, man, I see this kid walking. I see where he's headed. This is not going to end well. This is going to end a disaster. He needs to get his act together right now. And so there's this huge contrast between what this kid is feeling and what this old, wise man is feeling. And it's simply because this older, wiser man knows it is the direction the kid is headed that's going to determine where he ends up. All the kid is feeling is good times, party. This is an event. I'm about to experience something great. And the older, wiser man saying, no, this is not an event. This is not just an experience. This is a path, and it has a destination. Well, the story continues. The woman approached the young man, seductively dressed and sly of heart. She was the brash, rebellious type, never content to stay at home. She is often in the streets and markets, soliciting at every corner. She threw her arms around him and kissed him. And with a brazen look, she said, I've just made my peace offerings. So the woman approaches this young man, throws her arms around him, and after a little makeout session says, don't worry, I just made my peace offerings. She says, I've just been to church. I've just been to temple. In Jewish culture, a peace offering was a way of connecting with God. She says, I brought this animal to sacrifice to make me good with God. So in my mind, I've got a clean slate. In my mind, this bucket of all these wrongdoing I've had in my life, it's been emptied out because of the peace offering. And now I'm ready to fill it again. Now, we've all been there, right? We've all been there where we felt at a certain point in our life, in our heart, like, man, I've got so much wrong and so much shame I'm carrying. God, I need you to forgive me. I need you to make me clean. I feel good. I feel clean. And now how can I fill this up again? Right? That was yesterday I went to church. That was 3 days ago. I'm just ready. Anytime we got a little bit of margin in our life with God, with how we feel about ourselves, it's just like we're always filling it up. All right, got a little bit of margin in my time. Let's fill up my calendar. I got a little bit of margin in my finances. Let's live life to the max. And so this woman, when it came to how she felt about God and where how secure she felt in his love and his grace and his forgiveness, she says, oh man, I've dumped it out. I'm ready to fill this up again. And so she sees the young man heading in her direction. She walks up to him. She starts flirting with him, and she says this, you're the one I was looking for. I came out to find you, and here you are. And this kid's got a grin on his face that won't go away, right? He's saying, man, she came looking for me. This is how love works. This is how all the songs work. This is how movies work. I came out here taking a stroll, hoping I would run into her. That's why I'm on this path. But she came looking for me. I mean, this is too good to be true. Celebrate good times. Come on. Here's what she says next. She says, my bed is spread with beautiful blankets, with colored sheets of Egyptian linen. I perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's drink our fill of love until morning. I mean, this smile's not going away, right? He's thinking, I'm dreaming. I am in a music video right now. This is like being a celebrity in a club. This is so good. She continues. She says, let's enjoy each other's caresses, for my husband is not home. He's away on a long trip. He's taken a wallet full of money with him and won't return until later this month. She's not hinting anything. She's not, hey, I want to throw something out and see if you can read into it. No, she says, listen, my husband's gone. We got the house to ourselves. We can put on the music. We can be as loud as we want. We can take our time. We don't have to be rushed. And then what she says next is about as predictable as Taylor Swift writing another breakup song. Here's what she says. She says, or we read this, so she seduced him with her pretty speech and enticed him with her flattery. He's captivated by her. He follows her home and he's like a zombie. He's just in the zone. He's thinking, I am a celebrity right now walking into a club. All eyes are on me. I am like a rock star at this moment. All the women want to sleep with me. This is amazing. This is an event that I will tell my friends about for many, many years to come. I'm like a celebrity. I'm like a rock star. This is amazing. But Solomon, looking outside his window, watching this unfold, has something else to say. Here's what he writes. He says, he followed her at once like an ox going to the slaughter. No, Solomon. This is not like an ox going to the slaughter. This is like Mr. Rich and Famous going into the club. And Solomon says, no, it's like an ox going to slaughter. That's what it's like. And this young man has this soundtrack in his head, celebrate good times, come on. And Solomon has the theme music from Jaws playing. And just in case we miss what he's trying to communicate, he says it again, but in different words. He says the young man was like a stag. He was like a deer caught in a trap, awaiting the arrow that would pierce its heart. He was like a bird flying into a snare, little knowing it would cost him his life. Wah, wah. Right? Solomon is being such a downer. He's like a dad looking out the window, yelling at his kid. Right? He's like a mom looking out the window, trying to rain down on her son's parade. The young man's just thinking, man, this is an event. This is an evening. This is a date. This is awesome. And Solomon is saying, no, it's a path. Here's the reality. Naive people simply think about the moment. Naive people, we're all naive during different seasons of our life and on different paths. Naive people think about what's happening right now. How do I feel in this hour? What's going to happen today? What I say and what I do, how is it going to affect me immediately? Wise people are different. Wise people think about the future. Wise people wonder, how are the words I speak today going to impact me tomorrow? How does the way I handle my finances today impact me tomorrow? How does the way I date today impact me tomorrow? Solomon is so intense on what he's watching unfold that he pleads with his readers. Here's what he says. He says, so listen to me, my sons, and pay attention to my words. Don't let your hearts stray away toward her. Don't wander down her wayward path. He says, this is a path. You're not just going to her house. This isn't just about an evening. This isn't just about a moment. This is a path. He continues. He says, for she has been the ruin of many. Many men have been her victims. Her house is the road to the grave. Her bedroom is the den of death. Solomon says, I hate to break it to you. You're not as unique as you think you are. I know you've never felt this way before, and I know you say this is what movies are made of, and I know you think that she is my soulmate and she is everything I've ever wanted, but buddy, you are a part of a crowd. There have been many people who've experienced what you've experienced and felt what you're feeling and been where you're going. Now, this was written 3,000 years ago, but it's ancient wisdom because when we look at our lives today, we could literally take any aspect in any area of our life and we can say, yeah, things really haven't changed much. I mean, this is why when we read about a young man headed toward the house of a prostitute, we know what's going to happen. It's why if you've ever been to a therapist and you started to open up and you started to talk, at some point it's likely that they interrupted you and they finished your story and you were like, what? And if they let you finish your story, it was only because they were being nice. Because at the end of your story, they gave you 3 quick things that you need to do, and you left thinking, how are they so smart? How did they connect the dots? Man, they must have special insight. They might be into witchcraft stuff to be able to know what I was going through. It's just the fact that they've heard your story a gazillion times. Your story and my story is not as unique as we think it is. All of us have this idea that if we have good intentions and pure motives, we're going to end up where we want to be in life. But the reality is the path we take in life determines where we end up. Direction determines destination. And as true as that is, it is very, very easy for me, for you, for all of us to live life disconnected. And so I want to meet a great guy who loves God and has his act together. And so I'm going to say yes to the next person who asks me out. Right? That's how we live. Right? I want to have a very loving and close family. And so I'm going to work as many hours as possible so I can make as much money as possible. I want to be super, super healthy in order to give my best to my family, so supersize that. I want to be known for my generosity, and so I'm going to wait until I have more than I know what to do with to start living generous. I want to feel very connected with God. I want to feel like I have a relationship with Him. So the only time I'm ever going to pray is when I feel like I'm in a lot of trouble. I want to get married. I want to have an incredible sex life. And so I'm going to practice with everyone I date. Guys, it's so easy to live life disconnected, right? I want to have a great relationship with my husband, so I'm going to prioritize my kids over my husband. I want to be financially secure, and so I'm going to put myself in credit card debt because right now I can get 0% interest for 6 months. Let me just ask you this question. Is the path you're taking leading you to where you want to be? Life is a path. It's a highway. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter your education. It doesn't matter your personality is like. If you get into a car and you start driving north, you will never make it to Florida. And this is a principle that can work for you or against you, which some of you need to hear because some of you have been on a long, lonely path that feels dark and depressing and discouraging at times, but it's the right path. Some of you have been on a long path of forgiveness, and you've been for years trying to forgive someone who hurt you deeply. But you've been on this path, and you've been taking simple steps forward, and you're trying not to get payback, and you're trying not to get to revenge, because you know that the other direction leads you to bitterness. And you've been on this path for years, and now you're finally feeling a little bit of freedom. Some of you have been on a financial path, and it's been very challenging, but you've been on the right path financially, and it's just been step after step after step, and you keep saying to yourself, I'm going to live with this principle. Give, save, live on the rest. Give, save, live on the rest. I'm going to spend less than I make. And so you drive used cars even though you can afford a new one, and you live in a smaller house than you can afford. And Amazon Prime Day comes along, and you don't even go to your computer because you don't want to be tempted. And it's so hard, and it's so difficult, but you just have been faithful, and now for the first time in your life, you're feeling freedom. Or maybe you've been in some sort of recovery, and you've had people cheering you on, you can do this, and you've had times where you relapse, and it's so discouraging, but you just have done your best to just keep moving forward and meeting with people and having people in your life that keep you accountable. And now for the first time in your life, your kids are saying, wow, I respect my dad, I respect my mom. I think they're going to do this, that they're moving forward. It's a principle that can work for you or against you. So the question is, what path are you on? Is it leading you in the direction you want to go? For Christmas this past year, my parents bought me a book called Retire Inspired. And then, because they realized a book is a lame gift, they said, well, we'll give you $50 if you read it. Which even in my 40s, $50 is a good gift, right? And that's on top of the other stuff they got me. And so about a month ago, my parents said, hey, out of curiosity, how far are you into that book? I said, what book? Retire Inspired. And I realized I had not started it, and I didn't even know where it was. And so it was a good reminder. And so I went home and tracked it down, and I started to read it. And it feels so lame. You know why? Because I don't plan on retiring for another 25 or 30 years. Why would I read that? Why do my parents care? Because by the time I retire, they'll probably, I'll be living on the inheritance. Let's just put it that way. Right? Well, why does that matter? Well, it's because my parents are looking out the window. They're at a different stage in life. They're at that stage where they do start thinking about retirement, and they're learning. They're seeing at this stage how important it was to be putting aside all these years. And so they're looking at their kids who are walking on this path, and they're saying, man, my kids are on this path. There's the direction they're going, and I just want to make sure they're prepared, because one day they're going to be 65. One day they're going to be 70 years old. And so here I am as a son, and I'm like, kind of lame. Why do I need to read? Why do I need to be thinking in that direction? And my parents are saying, because eventually you're going to end up somewhere. The entire book of Proverbs filled with wisdom. Wisdom doesn't come overnight. It takes time and experience. But here's the deal. There are people in our world with time and experience. There are people in our world who are older and wiser, which means we can have a fast pass. We don't have to learn it all for ourselves. We can read the words of Proverbs. We can listen to people who've been there and done that in their marriage. We can look at people who've made good financial decisions. We can study the people who seem very connected with God and who have a relationship with Him that we admire and we envy, and we can get around them and we can ask questions and we can learn. So if the path you're on is not taking you to where you want to be, you need to get off. And if you say, well, I don't know if this is leading me to where I want to be, then you need to talk to someone who's older and wiser. So I would encourage you, as we wrap up, on your connection card, if you say, well, I don't know if this relationship that I'm in with my husband or wife is leading us to where we want to be, I'd encourage you just write marriage mentor on your connection card. And we can send you information. You're not committing in it. We could send you information about marriage mentors. You say, well, I don't know if I'm on the right financial path. We have brilliant financial minds in our church who'd be happy to sit down with you. And they're not going to sell you anything. They're not going to try to get you to be a part of their business or their company. But you could just put financial mentor. And we can connect you with someone who would be happy to sit down with you. Because our church is people helping people find and follow Jesus. You say, well, I don't really know much about God, and I'm kind of, Dave, when you talk, I don't really totally understand it all. In 8 weeks, we're going to launch a new season of groups which means you can sign up to be a part of an 8-week group where people take the talk that we give and then just kind of discuss it over the period of 8 weeks. You can do that, and it's not always going to be the most convenient for your schedule. It's not always going to be necessarily the easiest thing to do. But here's the deal. You'll learn, and you'll move down the right path. The reason the young man found himself in trouble wasn't because he wasn't hanging out with people. He had his friends. They just weren't older and wiser. We need people like that in our life. Before I pray for you, I want to let you know that next week, one of the guys that I've learned from over the last, since 2003 when I first met him, is going to be here and is going to be a guest speaker. His name is Mike Meeks. Mike is the reason Great Lakes Church exists. There's obviously many different factors, but Mike was the pastor of a church I worked at in San Diego that literally changed my life and my perspective of church. And so I hope that you can make the time to be here and learn from him as he continues our series, Old School. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, I pray put people into our life, older and wiser people, that can help us from making mistakes and going down the wrong path. Give us the wisdom to listen to the right advice and the courage to do it. In Jesus' name, amen.